Hello, I'm Mario Toneguzzi, Senior News Editor of Retail Insider. Joining me today is Neil Brigden, who is Assistant Professor of Marketing at Mount Royal University in Calgary. Thanks, Neil, for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Mario.
Well, I wanted to talk to you about branding and marketing in this day and age. And it's been top of mind all over the news in North America, especially some of the things that have happened with big brands like Target and Bud Light, where, in Target's case, it was, I guess, merchandise and products that were deemed inappropriate by a lot of people who started boycott against Target. In Bud Light's case, it was the use of a transgender personality as a spokesperson, which caused another boycott. Bottom line for these companies is they lost billions of dollars in market value within weeks. What lessons do you think businesses and marketers can learn from what's transpired with these two companies and others?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a lot to unpack, as you say there. I think one thing to keep top of mind is that the point of purpose is purpose. So if you decide your company is going to stand up for particular values in an effort to make the world a better place, in your opinion, that may or may not lead to profits. And in the short run, in particular, in the current US political environment, it may be quite bumpy. Brands that want to go down this path, that want to infuse purpose into their branding and marketing, should do so very thoughtfully and with a clear understanding of how the market might react. And this is particularly challenging for those mass brands like Bud Light, like Target, that aim to appeal to many different consumer groups. And in that situation, it can be almost impossible to adopt purpose without offending some customers. And so one way in which brands try to manage this is by tailoring specific messages to cater to different segments, different audiences. But what they're coming up against is this outrage machine of political commentators who thrive on controversy, who look for things to take offense at, and they will highlight and amplify anything that they deem controversial. And because of that, an action that the brand might have seen as a very small part of their marketing strategy, like one Instagram post, like a limited time line of clothing, can potentially get a lot of negative attention from an audience that it was never intended for.
Mm-hmm. Now, when a crisis like this hits companies like that, what should they do to mitigate the damage?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's difficult. I think while you can't anticipate every crisis, as much as possible, marketers need to know their audiences so they can try to anticipate some kinds of controversy and have plans in place to respond to those, so that not everything is on the fly and reactive. And then it depends a lot on the nature of the crisis. So on the one hand, I think marketers need to have the humility to consider the possibility that maybe you've made some sort of error or mistake, and that could just be a failure to anticipate a reaction. You may have not explained something well. But on the other side of the coin, you also need to have the conviction to stand by your principles. So if you are heading down this road because this is how you're going to change the world, then you need to stick by that. Often clarification is needed. Often these controversies arise from misunderstanding or the spread of inaccurate or false information. And so those clarifying statements can help, and they may be necessary even if you're just restating exactly what your messaging was. to try to drown out reinterpretations of that might be percolating in the on social media or in the atmosphere. And as I stated previously, if you intend to stand up for something, you need to be prepared to endure some pushback. And I mean, that is what it means to stand for something, right? To not just do something when it's easy,
Yeah.
to be willing to suffer as a result.
Yeah. What are the things that all these brands should consider when they associate with someone like an athlete or an actor or a personality, right? And we've all seen how things can go astray, right? Where brands are kind of like scrambling when one of those people, famous people or high profile people, does something wrong, right? So what should brands do in anticipation of that? It's a sort, again, to mitigate possible damage if things do go astray with a personality.
Right. Well, I mean, good marketers do their homework, so they understand what their target audience associates with the particular person that they're considering using as a celebrity endorser or influencer, and they would want to unpack whether that perception is uniform or is polarized. So, does everybody feel moderately positively about this person, or do they have either a love or loathe reaction among different segments of customers? And then, is there a really good fit between your brand and the kinds of associations people have with this particular individual? And you know, with that, you would also want to consider what else this person does, right? So, what other products or brands do they promote? Are they politically engaged? How does that align with your values and the branding you are trying to create?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, of course, you can do all your homework and then still be blindsided because people are inherently unpredictable. And for that reason, some brands prefer to have a cartoon mascot or something that's a little bit more predictable.
Yeah, yeah. I guess the lesson there is you got to be careful on who you associate with, right? Because
Yeah.
boy, like yeah, yeah, as things can go easily astray there. Like and you know, some of it is as you said, some of it is easy. You know the person's background and you can do your research and all that. But it's when some off the cuff type thing happens, and that's when you're scrambling, I guess, right? Yeah.
Right. I'd say that, you know, predictability is a pretty desirable trait in a celebrity endorser. Like, can you reasonably anticipate what kinds of things this person is likely to do into the future?
Yeah, exactly. Now, I want to talk a little bit about creating the brand. Here's a retailer or a business, and as an entity, how does it go about coming up with the idea of what the brand stands for, what the brand is, and then taking that into a concrete strategy?
Right. So uh, branding is always about building a sustainable competitive advantage. So when you do this well, you've created a valuable marketing asset that signifies what differentiates you from the competition and makes consumers think of you first, that makes them willing to pay more for your products than for competing products made by others.
Yeah.
So your goal is to create that awareness and understanding in the market of who you are, how you're different from the competition. So your branding strategy needs to align with and build off of the other aspects of your business. So it should hopefully already to be clear to you as the business owner or as the manager what it is that sets you apart. What are your key points of differentiation? And then your branding is about really distilling that down to a clear, concrete message, and then communicating that repeatedly into the marketplace.
Hmm.
And this is always a long-term endeavor. Branding is not about something that you change with each campaign. It's about something that is always in the background, continuously part of all of your other marketing activities.
Mm-hmm.
And then the challenge, of course, is that the impact of brand building is not immediately apparent in sales in the short run.
Yeah.
And so you need to think about how you can measure the kinds of things you're trying to influence or change. So how can you measure how your target market perceives you? So even if this isn't directly leading into an increase in sales this month, can we measure progress in customer perception? Do they see us as differentiated from our competitors? Are they understanding the key attributes that we are trying to communicate that set us apart?
Mm-hmm.
And then because of that, that fact that brand building tends not to directly translate to short-term sales, you need to balance your brand building activities with more short-term sales activation. So don't make brand building your whole marketing plan. Also think about the customers that are already in your sales funnel, so to speak, that are looking to buy. Think about converting those to purchase and what sort of messages you need to achieve those goals alongside your long-term brand building goals.
Mm-hmm. I want to talk a little bit about influencers, Neil. And the Bud Light case, was wrong choice of influencer, obviously, result, judging by the results, I guess. But the use of influencers in branding, in marketing, in advertising, et cetera, is a good or bad idea?
Of course, the answer is it depends. Influencers can be a very cost-effective way to connect with specific audiences, and particularly younger audiences who are very active on social media, but may be harder to reach through more traditional forms of advertising or marketing. And while some influencers have huge audiences, in general, we're talking about somebody who might have 10,000 followers or something in that neighborhood. And so because of those smaller audience sizes, the cost is lower. But that also means that as a marketer, you'd need to hire many, many influencers to reach a large audience.
Yeah.
And in the wake of the Bud Light controversy, Anheuser-Busch has stated that they work with hundreds of influencers. And at that scale, it becomes much more difficult for their marketing team to do the same level of vetting that they would with a major celebrity endorser, right? So if we're not talking about $1 million multi-year contracts, if we're talking about paying somebody to put a post on their Instagram, it's hard to make the same sort of investment in evaluating each of those influencers that you might be using. And along with that, you probably don't have the same degree of control with an Instagram influencer that you would if you hire a big name celebrity endorser and then you're filming the ad with featuring them, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then as we touched on earlier, brands need to consider how unintended audiences might view these influencer activities, right? So while you may craft something to reach a specific segment of the market, social media posts can end up being widely shared if people deem them controversial or newsworthy, which is what happened in the Bud Light case.
Yeah, and I guess that in this day and age, all these brands, they really have to embrace the digital world, right? It's no longer it's no longer the same advertising, throw up a commercial on the television or an ad in the paper, right? The branding now is encompassing all this and all these platforms, right?
Right. So there's a lot to consider, a lot to integrate, and yeah, lots of different audiences that these brands are trying to speak to, especially those big mass brands.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Neil, I appreciate your time in this. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
All right, that was Neil Brigden, who is Assistant Professor of Marketing at Mount Royal University in Calgary. I'm Mario Toneguzzi, Senior News Editor of Retail Insider. Thanks for joining us today.